Hey, it's Mike here, and today a startup product that is designed to realistically replace animal fat with some health benefits. Could this be the missing link in that meat texture profile that those plant-based products don't seem to meet according to people? We're gonna ask a bunch of questions like, could it make animal fat obsolete? What is the process? We're gonna learn all about that. And no, it is not lab-grown animal fat. It uses familiar ingredients with a novel process. And finally, is it healthy? We're gonna look deeply into that because I have been using it on my hair to make my hair extra curly, so I get more comments about my hair being messy, which gets more engagement and more views for my channel. I'm kidding, I don't have access to this stuff. So we're just gonna learn what we can about this. Let's go. We're talking about the startup Lypid, Lypid, and their product PhytoFat, which essentially just means plant fat. And they are a startup that recently raised $4 million last year, and they already have their burger product in like 500 coffee shops in Taiwan, as well as a bunch of other restaurants. So over there, people are getting to taste this stuff. However, they have their manufacturing over there, and they're working on getting manufacturing in the US, so it's not in the US yet in the market. They use a process known as microencapsulation, which we'll get to in a little bit. But first, they've also launched a pork belly product, which seems kind of like a bacon-ish product, which I think is a great one to experiment with fat with. And the founders are two PhDs. We have Michelle Lee, who appears to have invented it, a PhD food scientist focused on fat alternatives, and then Jen Yu Huang, a PhD in biochemical engineering with a focus on biomimicry. And before we learn about microencapsulation, how it works, what is different about it, we need to do a little bit of background on why a lot of these plant-based products sort of fall short in terms of the fat behavior within them, the texture and profile, as well as the cooking properties. Animal fat is in a animal cell known as an adipocyte, which is more or less a fat reservoir, which is contained within a membrane as well as a bunch of other components. And yes, that's the same fat that is in our belly, and it is kind of gross that we're just trying to mimic that. But hey, that's what the people want, so that's what we gotta deliver. I just want people to eat less animals, so if it works, it works. Anyway, yes, plant cells do have fat within a membrane as well, but it's harder to mimic meat with them because they've got all that fiber and those other plant flavors within them. So all these, mock meat products end up using straight up oils. And in the most popular plant products like Beyond and Impossible, we're generally talking about a high saturated fat oil like coconut oil or palm oil and some other products. Not good. So a plant burger might have the same amount of fat on paper, but then when you cook it, that saturated fat, which is solid at room temperature, might just melt into a puddle beneath it. I've seen that happen on a panini maker before. It's not pretty. And I do think this can make all the difference because for existing plant meats, it seems like the protein aspect is pretty well locked in. I mean, we've got these sort of stranded protein textures as well as just mimicking ground animal products, which is easier to do. And that's why, as I mentioned before, the Impossible Burger, as well as some other products like even sausages, are tricking people in blind taste tests into thinking that they're actually animal-based. But there's still a bunch of other products like marbled steaks and bacon and cheese that haven't seemingly tricked anybody yet. We need to develop those, and this could be the key. However, people's cheese addiction could just be due to those opioid casomorphins, drawing them back to it in an addictive way.
A vegan startup founder was arrested for adding fentanyl to his new vegan cheese product. It was the only way to compete, he says.
Okay, now this is where microencapsulation actually comes in because like an animal cell, we're talking about a fatty reservoir and a membrane, so we're getting a lot more similar. We're talking about a small encapsulated sphere, and you can put whatever vegetable-based oil that you want in there, and that's why these PhytoFat foods, as Lypid says, are generally between 85 and 97% lower in saturated fat than their animal counterpart. And with saturated fat, again, being solid at room temperature, you have a certain structure that it can hold. It has some spreadability, but with those vegetable oils, or as things heat up, they would just melt and leave or not be able to be spread at all. They're just a liquid. But in this case, that membrane is able to hold things together.
It's highly stable. It will hold its texture for over 6 months. We have perfected it with many vegan oils. Zero hydrogenation, zero texturizers. Compare that to these vegan bacons. As you cook them, the oil just leaks out rapidly.
And the volatile flavors cook off too, and too soon.
But again, that's why all these popular plant-based burgers rely heavily on high saturated fat products. Anyway, we have the actual process here of encapsulation, which involves spraying, wetting, spreading. Stop laughing. No more laughing. And finally coating. Here's what it looks like, and I've never been so happy to say that something looks like lard, but it does, and the meltability, as you can see in this video, of animal fat on the left and the PhytoFat on the right is quite convincing. Now, this next information I'm going to talk about is somewhat speculative. A lot of it is not going to be just directly divulged, it's proprietary information, but based off other products that use microencapsulation, we can take some guesses. It appears that the inside is an emulsion of fat and water. Another emulsion you might be familiar with, mayonnaise. And the membrane, they say, is, quote, made from food-grade polymers that are already approved and available to use on the market. Polymers? What are these edible polymers that sound scary, kind of like some type of plastic? Well, nope. From this paper, quote, edible polymers are mainly composed of polysaccharide, which is a type of carbohydrate, proteins, and lipids, are nature-based materials which can be easily consumed by animals and humans without any harmful effect on health. Examples include cellulose and hex starch itself, as well as agar, which you might have seen on the back of products already. And it's likely that using different types of membranes can affect the actual spreadability and the temperature melting point, which we'll get into. But quickly, let's tie up encapsulation with this video of the manufacturing process that I found. Sorry, it's only 480p.
Stabilized in the homogenization phase to prevent the components separating. This mixture is then sprayed as a fine cloud of mist and dried in a current of air until the water content is only a few percent. Simultaneously, particles of starch are added to form the outer layer of the microcapsules and provide the necessary flowability. After gentle drying, capsules measuring about 300 micrometers, known as beadlets, are obtained.
That's pretty impressive. Humans are quite amazing. And next I want to get into those properties and those textures and really craveability and how that all ties together. And first, I just want to talk about why I think this is so important, why I'm doing a whole video on this. And that has to do with just people's craving for animal fat. A pretty recent Faunalytics survey/study found that the really main reason people are quitting a vegan diet is their dissatisfaction with vegan food, which essentially all their cravings for animal-based foods. And we know that those are those high-fat animal-based foods like bacon. We're not talking about wild game lean jerkies that are salt-free. They're not craving the protein or something like that. It has to do with the fat, and I believe it has to do with the way that fat is distributed and holds up in cooking. We have to think about the structure of each bite that people are taking and why they would crave a certain configuration. I mean, look at this picture of their meatball cut open. And that PhytoFat, you can kind of see these chunks there, and that is more similar to animal products. Again, this isn't melting. The quote-unquote food matrix isn't breaking down like it does within a bunch of other plant-based meats. And so when somebody's brain is craving the most high-calorie food that they can think of because they're hungry or whatever, that plays a role. How that hits the tongue, what percent of that bite has some intact fat on it, which then tells the brain, how many calories are in there. That is going to be higher and really just closer to an animal product than other plant-based products if it's using a product like this, the PhytoFat. So I could be wrong, but I think if this is executed well, the cravings for this type of food could be directly on par with a lot of these addicting animal-based foods like bacon and these bratwursts and potentially even cheeses. We'll talk about the health implications in a little bit. But first I want to talk about temperature. They have 3 different iterations here. They have a low, a medium, and a high temperature melting point version of it. So that's going to be customizable, which will make sense for different types of products. And secondly, we have this flavor profile advantage potentially because fat, we don't have the taste receptors directly for it. We got this umami thing going on, but people aren't spooning lard generally if they're mentally healthy, probably not for its flavor. And so your animal fat, pretty dead in terms of flavor, but you can actually put different flavors within this fat and encapsulate it within that PhytoFat, which is an advantage, I think, into the future. But in terms of what they have right now, I had to wonder, what does this actually taste like? And it's a newer product. I haven't seen a bunch of taste tests, but I found this one on that, baconish pork belly product that they have. Here's a dude.
We're here in front of Lypid that makes a plant-based alternative fat that goes into plant-based products. We're going to get to try their bacon, which I heard is really good. Let's go check it out. Bacony.
So this dude, who I don't believe is vegan or anything like that, appears to be pretty happy with it, but I would love to see some blind taste tests on various products made with PhytoFat in the future. Just gotta wait on those. And in terms of future products, I think that this could actually be super useful, especially because all of these super popular animal-based products are high-fat animal products. I mean, we're talking about things like cheese. I'd love to see how well this integrates into cheese. We also have, again, bacon, things like those steaks with the marbled fat in them. And finally, fatty fish, which I think is really important. And I had to wonder, if you're blocking this with microencapsulation from the air, clearly you would be able to extend the life of omega-3s, which is important to prevent them from oxidizing. And I did find this paper with, microencapsulation is one approach used to protect those oils from oxidative deterioration and to improve their ingredient profile. Now, this is interesting because heating does oxidize some DHA and EPA, those long-chain omegas, as well within fish. So I actually wonder if you could prevent oxidation more so by using this PhytoFat, especially because oxidized omega-3s can be harmful. And finally, I couldn't help but think of foie gras, which is of course where they're overfeeding a goose so they get fatty liver, which, again, it's literally the fat within the liver, and you basically have to torture animals to make this, but you could make this vegan foie gras be really realistic, I believe. And yes, they do still make foie gras, which is horrendous. I was in the Paris airport last year and I saw it in a package there and almost puked anyway. What about the health effects here? Right off the bat, again, any vegetable oil, we're talking about 90% lower saturated fat. And again, saturated fat raises LDL or bad cholesterol, and high LDL is causally linked to atherosclerosis. But I understand people's first reaction might be, hey, you're just finding another way to eat processed vegetable oil. I have whole videos on why that is not healthy, although I have whole videos ranking which oils are the healthiest. I mean, you could be throwing flax oil, which, as I showed, has several benefits. And again, the oxidization could be prevented with the microencapsulation of those omega-3s encapsulation. But I also think that with that membrane, it is possible that it could delay the digestion of these fats a little bit, which could lower perhaps any artery impairment effects that we see after high-fat meals, whether it's animal fat or a lot of certain vegetable oils as well. So I think that this will be wildly healthier than the animal product alternatives, but again, not going to be as healthy as whole plant foods. That's pretty much a rule across the board. And finally, it seems to be a race really between products like this one and lab-grown fats, which appear to be an easier process than lab-grown meats. They require less complexity in their mediums for growth and things like that. It seems like the PhytoFat has a jump on the lab-grown fat, but we'll see which one really has people going, I can't tell the difference. In the end, I'm just excited about any product that's going to replace animal products for several reasons, of course, for the animals, also for the impact on the environment, and then in this case, and in virtually all cases, an improvement in people's health. And I'm excited that they're already going in Asia, and I really hope that they are able to smoothly enter the US market. So let me know down below what you think about this. If you are somebody over in Taiwan who's been able to try this, absolutely comment down below what you thought about it, and feel free to like and subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.